Welcome, restless souls, to Carmen's Crypt. I'm Carmen Carrion, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close. The candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carmen's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carmen's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. The monsters walk among us. What drives an ordinary person to kill? I'm diving deeper into the darkest classroom of all, the human heart. My new show is Deadly Intent, the dark side of humanity. The true crime podcast that doesn't just tell you what happened, but explores the twisted psychology of why it happened. Each Tuesday, I'll take you beyond the headlines to discover the deadly intent behind history's most chilling cases. From the Hinterkaifeck killer, who lived among his victims, to the doomsday mom, who justified murder with faith. Intent. It's what separates accident from murder. Passion from premeditation, justice from revenge. This is psychological exploration at its darkest. Every killer has a reason, but does reason ever justify murder? Subscribe to Deadly Intent wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Content warning. This podcast contains detailed discussions of violence and disturbing criminal behavior. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Follow me at Carmen Carrion for updates and additional content. The notification came through while Ethan was getting evicted. Congratulations, you've inherited property from Robert Reynolds in Montana. Fuck my life, he muttered, watching the sheriff's deputies load his belongings into boxes. His startup had crashed 6 months ago, taking his savings, his girlfriend, and his dignity with it. Now his estranged father, who'd cut him off for dropping out of college, had left him some backwoods property he had probably never even seen. The eviction notice was already taped to his apartment door. His credit cards were maxed. His phone service would be cut off next week. Montana it was. The Honda Civic barely made it up the mountain roads, engine wheezing like an asthmatic chain smoker. When Ethan finally reached Twin Pines Ranch, his first thought was that his father had lost his goddamn mind. The Victorian farmhouse looked like something from a horror movie, paint peeling like diseased skin, porch sagging under the weight of neglect, windows dark as dead eyes. 200 acres of Montana wilderness stretched beyond it, disappearing into pine forests that seemed to swallow light. Home sweet fucking home, Ethan said, stepping out into air so clean it hurt his city-damaged lungs. No Wi-Fi networks. The nearest neighbor was probably 20 miles away. It was like stepping back into the Stone Age. Inside, the house reeked of mold and something else he couldn't identify. Something rotten that made his stomach clench. Dust sheets covered every piece of furniture. Water stains on the ceiling looked like reaching hands. In what had been his father's study, Ethan found stacks of research papers, geological surveys, and journals filled with increasingly erratic handwriting. March 12th. The sounds are getting worse, scratching from below. Something's down there. April 18th. Found tracks around the property. Not human, not animal. Something else. May 3rd. They're watching me. I can feel their eyes in the dark." The final entry was dated 3 days before his father's death, May 15th. "I know what they are now, what they want. The hunger never stops. It's been 27 years since the last time. They're waking up." "Great," Ethan muttered. "Dad went completely fucking insane before he died." A crash from the kitchen made him jump. When he investigated, he found a broken window and muddy handprints on the sill. Handprints with too many fingers. Dr. Valerie Mendez showed up the next morning in a beat-up pickup truck, looking like she'd stepped out of a country music video. Dark hair, sun-weathered skin, curves in all the right places despite the mud-stained work clothes. "You must be Rob's boy," she said, extending a calloused hand. "I'm the local vet. Been taking care of your livestock." "We have livestock?" "Horses, chickens. Your father asked me to keep them fed if anything happened to him." She paused, studying Ethan's face. He seemed to expect something would. That caught his attention. "What do you mean?" "Your father was scared of something on this property. Real scared. Last time I saw him, he was boarding up the basement like he was trying to keep something in. Or out." They walked the property together, Valerie pointing out boundaries and explaining the care needed for the animals. She was easy to talk to and attractive enough that Ethan found himself hoping she'd stick around. "What do you know about the history of this place?" he asked as they approached a dense stand of pines on the eastern ridge. "Not much. Native tribes avoided this area completely, called it hungry ground." She pointed toward the tree line. "My grandmother used to tell stories about people disappearing up there. The earth would just swallow them whole." "Comforting." "There's an old oak tree somewhere in those woods, supposed to be hollow, big enough to walk inside. Kids dared each other to find it when I was growing up, but no one ever did." She shivered despite the warm afternoon. "Your father asked about it too." They found the tree just before sunset. It stood alone in a clearing that felt wrong somehow. Too quiet and still. The massive oak was ancient, its trunk twisted into unnatural shapes. A gaping hole in its center was large enough for a person to crawl through. "Jesus," Valerie breathed. "I've hiked these woods my whole life. I've never seen this tree before." Ethan circled it slowly. The bark was covered in deep gouges, like claw marks. At the base, the roots curved down into what looked like a cave entrance. A foul smell drifted up from the darkness below. The same organic rot he'd smelled in the house, but stronger. Much stronger. "We should go," Valerie said, but Ethan was already kneeling beside the opening. Cool air flowed from the depths, carrying whispers that might have been wind through stone, or might have been something else. That's when they found the bodies. 3 deer lay scattered around the tree's base, mostly hidden by fallen leaves. That's why they hadn't seen them at first. Their carcasses had been torn open, internal organs ripped out, but there wasn't a drop of blood anywhere, as if they'd been completely drained. Worst of all, their eyes were missing. The sockets were clean and empty, like they'd been carefully removed. "What the fuck feeds like this?" Ethan whispered. From deep in the cave came a sound that raised every hair on his body. Laughter, low, wet, and definitely not human. They ran. That night, Ethan dreamed of pale things with too many joints crawling through the walls. He jerked awake to the sound of scratching at his bedroom door. The digital clock read 1:15 a.m. "Valerie?" he called. She had decided to stay over, rather than drive the mountain roads in the dark. The scratching stopped. Then came a voice that made his blood freeze. "Ethan." The word was stretched out, distorted. Come play. He grabbed his phone, using its light to approach the door. Who's there? Your daddy, the voice whispered. He's waiting for you down below. Ethan backed away from the door, his heart hammering. Whatever was out there scratched once more. Then he heard it moving, not walking, but skittering across the floor like a giant insect. The basement door creaked open. You look like death, Valerie observed over coffee the next morning. Something was outside my door last night. It knew my father's voice. Ethan's hands shook as he lifted his mug. I think Dad's still alive down there, or something that used to be him. Instead of calling him crazy, Valerie set down her coffee with a grim expression. I found more bodies this morning, a whole family of deer, same as yesterday, all drained, eyes missing. We need to know what we're dealing with. Ethan pulled out his father's digital camera. Found this in the study. Haven't had the balls to look at the photos yet. They huddled together as he scrolled through the images. Geological formations, forest scenes, the hollow tree. Then the final photo made them both gasp. The image was blurry, taken while running, but clear enough. A pale humanoid figure was emerging from the cave beneath the tree. 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs, hairless skin that glistened wetly in the camera flash. No eyes, just smooth indentations where they should be. But its mouth was a nightmare of jagged teeth, dripping with saliva. In the background, partially obscured, were dozens more. The timestamp was May 18th, 3 days after his father had supposedly drowned. We're calling the police, Valerie said. And tell them what? That my dead father is actually a cave monster? Ethan's voice cracked. They found his wallet at the bottom of a lake, Val. Case closed, remember? Ethan, look at the date on these disappearances. He pulled out newspaper clippings from his father's research. 1997, 1970, 1943. Every 27 years, people vanish around here. Dad figured it out. It's some kind of hibernation cycle. Valerie stared at the timeline. That would make this year, year 27. They're waking up, hungry. They went back to the tree that afternoon, armed with gasoline and matches. If these things were underground, maybe they could smoke them out or trap them inside. But when they reached the clearing, the oak tree had changed. The bark was now oozing a luminescent sap that glowed like radioactive honey. The cave entrance had widened, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. Ethan approached the tree, mesmerized by the glowing sap. It pulsed like a heartbeat, beautiful and hypnotic. Don't touch it, Valerie warned, but her voice seemed to come from far away. He reached out, letting the substance coat his fingertips. Immediately, euphoria flooded his system. Colors became more vivid, sounds sharper. He could hear heartbeats, Valerie's rapid pulse, his own thundering rhythm, and something else, something massive, beating far beneath the earth. We need to seal this, he said, his voice oddly calm. Concrete, explosives, whatever it takes. Ethan, look at your hand. He glanced down. His veins were glowing with the same luminescence as the sap. As he watched, his skin began to turn translucent. I'm fine, he insisted, though part of him knew he wasn't. Something was changing in him, cell by cell, rewriting his DNA. They worked frantically as the sun set, mixing cement and gathering rocks to block the entrance. But the sap's influence was spreading through Ethan's system. His movements became jerky, uncontrolled. His bones ached as they began to lengthen. "Almost done," he gasped, pouring another load of concrete. That's when the ground around them began to shift. New holes appeared among the roots as creatures burrowed up from below. Pale, clawed hands emerged, followed by elongated limbs and eyeless faces. They were surrounded. The creatures rose fully from their holes, 7-foot nightmares with glistening skin and mouths full of needle-sharp teeth. They moved with spider-like grace, their elongated limbs allowing them to crawl along the ground with unnatural speed. "Run!" Ethan shouted. They sprinted through the forest, the creatures in pursuit. Ethan could hear them gaining, not just their footfalls, but their breathing, their heartbeats. His changing senses were becoming more like theirs. His legs gave out halfway to the house, sending him sprawling as pain lanced through his elongated bones. "Go!" he gasped to Valerie. "I'll hold them off. I'm not leaving you." But the creatures had stopped at the edge of the forest, watching, waiting. The largest stepped forward, its skin less translucent than the others, almost human in places. When it spoke, Ethan's world collapsed. "Hello, son," it said in his father's voice. They barricaded themselves in the farmhouse, pushing furniture against doors and windows. Ethan collapsed on the sofa as his transformation accelerated. His fingers were lengthening, skin thinning until blue veins showed through like a roadmap of corruption. "There has to be an antidote," Valerie said frantically, searching through his father's research. "Some way to reverse this." "The journal," Ethan groaned through reshaping jaws. "Check the last pages." She found it, a final entry written in increasingly erratic handwriting. "The sap is a catalyst. Evolution in fast forward. These things were human once, people who touched the substance and transformed. Perfect adaptation for cave dwelling. The hunger drives them to feed, to multiply. I've been infected. Soon I'll join them. The cycle continues. Every 27 years, they emerge to add new members to their colony. God help me. I understand now why they chose this place. The caves go down for miles, connecting to something ancient beneath the mountain, something that's been growing for centuries." Outside, creatures surrounded the house. Knocking came from all sides. Doors, windows, and from below. The basement. "They're under us," Valerie whispered. Ethan could barely speak now, his jaw extended into something inhuman.
"You have to go. Take my car. Warn people."
Tears streamed down Valerie's face. "I won't leave you." But Ethan was changing rapidly. His legs were fusing into a single appendage, better suited for crawling through narrow spaces. Rows of teeth erupted in the expanding mouth. The pain was excruciating, but underneath it was something worse. Hunger. Ravenous, overwhelming need. "I can't fight it much longer," he forced out through mutating vocal cords. "But I can give you time." The basement door exploded inward. His father stood there, still, recognizably human in places, but stretched and twisted into something that belonged in nightmares.
"Time to come home, son,"
Robert Reynolds said, extending a claw-tipped hand. Ethan felt his humanity slipping away as hunger consumed his thoughts. But one part of his mind remained clear as Valerie ran for the car. In 27 years, they would emerge again, hungrier, more numerous, and by then, no one would remember Valerie's warning. As consciousness faded and instinct took over, Ethan's last human thought was regret. Not for his transformation, that was beyond his control, but for what he and his kind would do to the world above. The colony was growing, and so was their hunger. 3 months later, missing persons reports began flooding Montana police stations. Hikers, campers, locals, all vanishing without a trace. In the wilderness around Twin Pines Ranch, search teams found evidence of struggle, torn clothing, trails that ended abruptly at cave entrances, but no bodies, never any bodies. The caves went deeper than anyone imagined, connecting to a vast network that stretched beneath half the state. And in the deepest chambers, something ancient was stirring, something that had been sleeping for millennia, waiting for enough servants to wake it properly. The 27-year cycle was ending. The real feeding was about to begin. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carmen's crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your own mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media. Who knows, your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carmen's crypt, every fear comes alive, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.